Wake up and smell the coffee, Mr. LaRusso.
Extreme situations require extreme measures.
Yo, guys, back to Cobra Kai Karate. Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to finally talk about Breaking Bad Season 2, which I put in the title, a sloppy masterpiece. Now, when I say that, this is not necessarily to say it's bad. I just think it really does have a lot of weird stuff. There's a lot of stuff that kind of seems pointless and forced in there for I don't even know why. And a lot of the great stuff just seems really chopped up and not placed in the right order. And to me, that makes it the worst season in the show. Now, worst season in the show does not necessarily make it a bad season, but when you're talking about compared to the other seasons, it does not live up to all four of them. Some, not at all. But I'm going to get into this. We're going to start off episode 1. Let's go. So I think the beginning, the first episode started off very well. It really does just finish right where you have, like literally right where you leave season 1. And I think the first 2 episodes are really good in following and continuing the tension that was already built up from Breaking Bad season 1. And I think it really ends the whole entire Tuco, Salamanca era kind of ends. And the tension of them being kidnapped, being taken there and escaping, everything building there, him coming back to his family, all that stuff seems very, very good. The issue with that is that feels more like an ending to season 1 of Breaking Bad than actual a continuation and forward progress in the season. Because after that whole entire thing doesn't really play too much into this. And then the rest of the next couple episodes, Walt and Jesse are kind of just separated, taking a break, and it becomes a lot more about the family and their personal life, which is really good. But to me, I feel like that stuff we explored more and learned more in season 1. I feel like season 2 should have kicked off. Well, first off, I think the first 2 episodes should have been the ending of season 1. Season 1 only being 7 episodes, the ending like that was really weird. So the first 2 episodes just really feels like the ending of season 1. And then after that, I think it should have took into a different turn of them, actually growing more of friendship. But you don't really see that yet. You don't see it for a long time. Because the next couple episodes, episode 3 and 4, it's a lot more about them just being on their own. And it doesn't really make it that compelling. In episode 4, you get to see, Jesse's just life go completely terribly wrong. He loses his house, he can't turn anywhere, and it's just, I think the episode individually is great, but when you're watching it, I think it's so tragic to see Jesse like this, and I think it's almost like a standalone episode at times. That's why I mean the pacing in this season wasn't like season 1 where you got to see both layers of Walter and Jesse's life simultaneously. In this, you get almost like basically a standalone episode of Jesse, and then Walter is barely put in there with his family, and that is something that seems a little weird. But then you get to, I think, in the half, so like the first 4 episodes, the first episode felt like the ending of episode 1, and then 3 and 4 felt like more of a kind of like a part, like almost like a part split up, and like in this, like those 2 episodes feel like a sort of Jesse driven stuff, and kind of Walt and kind of reconnecting with his family, and a little bit of drama there. That seems what those 2 episodes were really about. And that doesn't really have too much to do with the first 2 episodes or really the rest of the season. So that's why it's a little bit confusing, because Jesse, you just see him basically almost tortured, like emotionally, but then he just goes back to doing what he lives off to do. So it just seems a little out of place. I think the episodes individually are great, and to see Jesse go through that was awful, but something about it does not seem right when you're actually watching the season. This is what I mean by a sloppy masterpiece. They put a lot of great scenes in here, but I think they mash it up in a strange way. But with that being said, this season does a really good job at exploring different characters. Although I do think they do it in a kind of a strange way sometimes, I still think they do it very, very well. Like, for example, Hank this season. In season 1, Hank, he really just kind of this funny comedic character, cop. They don't really explore that enough. In season 2, you get to see him start to have the PTSD of what happened with Tuco and the whole stuff there, and him struggling with that. And I think it's so perfect for his character, because Hank actually never really, he seems kind of like, the epitome of what a masculine man is supposed to be. And you can see it with his wife Marie, his friends. He really hides and he does not want to show it. And I think just seeing him breaking down and struggling with stuff and not being able to open up to anyone is really, really good. But yeah, the rest of episode 5, you get to just see a lot more of Jesse moving in, and he meets Jane, which is going to be a whole nother thing we'll talk about later. But then we get to see now Jesse and Walt are now on their own, doing their own stuff, and yeah, that's basically the episode there. But then Skyler and Walt start to get their own problems, and they start to grow stuff. Then you get episode 6 called Peekaboo, which is a really good standalone episode. And I'll say that because I think it really is standalone. Which, like I said, this is what I mean. It's such a good episode individually. I just don't think it necessarily fits well in the story, because this episode is basically Walt saying, handle it. Like, don't let them just walk over our business and have us have a bad reputation out there. So he goes after that, and you get to see a whole entire side, and it's just a terrible, tragic stuff that happens there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But after that, Jesse reconnects himself. The streets think of him different, but eventually they find out that's not true, and Jesse goes right along. Nothing truly changes as much in the overall story. But when you actually see the scenes and seeing him there with the kid and seeing this good side of Jesse and seeing you're seeing the dirty and dark stuff of what drugs and meth does to you, is a really good pivotal moment of the show to see that, because that's what it truly is about. I think Breaking Bad shows the dark side of that and how it can truly affect you, and the people working it can also affect them. So I think it's a really good episode on its own. I just do not think it necessarily fits in the story. Where episode 5 is a lot more about Hank. You didn't see really any Hank. I don't think you saw Hank at all this episode. So it just seems a little mixed up. Then you get to episode 7, where you go back to the Hank storyline, where Hank is now there with the Mexico stuff and the whole stuff with the turtle and the explosion and how crazy that was. And you have Walt go and actually talk to Hank about that and how it kind of correlation with him and his life. Really good stuff. That episode, you also start to see the whole Jesse and Jane stuff, which is probably the biggest problem of the show season. Jane does not fit in the story. She just seems out of nowhere. They really used her as a way to grow a wage between him and Walter, and then it kind of ends with kind of pushing Walt more towards the dark side. And I think it's really well, because when you get to the ending where Jane kind of forcing Walt's hand and then him allowing her to die, makes sense, logical sense, and it is something that you can understand him doing, because it's also to save Jesse's life with the whole drug use. But at the same time, you see that it hurts him too, and I think it's a step that you take with the character. So I think Jane in that sense was really, really well, but when you get to it, really, it's just her role in the show and her individually is really annoying and does not fit well in the episodes that they're placed in, and also her father, the whole stuff there about he happens to be in the same bar with Walter, and then they happen to break, and then that happens to make the whole plane crash, and then now Walt feels like guilty that this, like, all this happens here. I understand the concept of it, like, one small decision of evil can actually mean something really bigger, but it seems way too much of a coincidence, and to end the season like that just seems a little weird, especially when you're teasing it from the opening scene of the season about the whole pink bear. Just like an conclusion ending in a coincidence just seems a little weird. And then you see Walter coping with the loss in the opening season 3, but then that goes really nowhere. So when you're rewatching it feels like, what are we doing? It just seems a little strange. And then you also get the whole stuff with Skyler and Ted, which is one of the worst stuff in the show. I understand showing more sides to Skyler's character, but like, Ted was the most meaningless character in the show, and that stands true in 3 and 4. And it's not just season 2, but season 2 is when it was worse. Not only do you get the birthday scene, which is one of the worst scenes in cinema history, it just seems so weird and awkward, and it's just not fun to watch. I mean, it's that simple to say. It makes sense why Skyler's doing this to a degree, to show sides in the relationship and show just a lot of different flaws in characters. But why? Like, we really don't need to see this. Like, why can't you just show more of Skyler and Marie, or it could just be a normal guy? It doesn't have to be Ted, who was the most insufferable. I just do not like him, bro. I just really do not like the whole relationship they do there. Do not like it at all. You get to episode 8 where you bring in Saul Goodman, or Jim Miguel, one of my favorite characters, where but in Breaking Bad he's more of just an over-top lawyer. He's not really the character we know in Better Call Saul. So he's a fun addition in the show. He has a lot of energy in season 2, and it adds more into Walt and Jesse's growing more into the stuff where they start to go for Gus Fring. And I think that's just really good. I think the show ends very, very well. The episode 9 where they're out in the desert and they get trapped, that's one of the best episodes in the show. I think that's phenomenal. When you get more to the ending about Jane's death and the whole stuff there and Jesse, I thought those scenes were really, really good and really emotional, and it shows the care. And then it ends with Skylar finding out. So I think the show and the season does a really good job and really good episodes, but I think it's just so sloppy in the way they present it. And I think they throw a lot of stuff in there. They didn't know exactly what they were doing. The James, like, they throw stuff in there to add to a character, but the characters and the stuff does not really have a meaning of its own, like at its time. And and as it's placed in with episodes, and you have so much arcs going on simultaneously, they just don't really balance as much as you saw in season 3 and 4 and 5. And season 1, I feel like that was just more simple. That didn't actually have the whole Hank storyline, have all these separate characters. It was a lot more about just Walt and Jesse. But season 2, you seem to try to introduce all these different arcs and characters and studies, but they do it and they don't exactly know how to do it yet. They don't know how to place it well, and it just kind of seems like they're just kind of, they have the idea, the masterpiece that they continue in the rest of the show, but they're kind of just taking the baby steps and they're kind of just all over the place. And ultimately, they can't really decide on it being a simple tone show about Walt and Jesse or it being a whole entire different show, and it kind of just gets a little unbalanced. That's why the season is a sloppy masterpiece to me. Still a fantastic season. I'm going to give this season my rating. I'm going to give this an 8.4 out of 10. Actually, we'll give it 8.5. I think it's a phenomenal season. But when you look at the other seasons, it's just not as great. But it's still a phenomenal season. That's my opinion on season 2 of Breaking Bad. There's my graph right there. There you go. So let me know guys about that below. I am rewatching the show right now. I'm actually already finishing season 4, so I'm a little bit late to this. But yeah, I'm going to rank all these seasons. I'm going to review all of them, then I'll rank them all. So stay tuned for that. More videos to come. Let me know guys about the season in the comments down below. Always remember, extreme measures. Peace out.